Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Bought the Toy, Learn to Plan, 7 Steps to Speech Recognition Success. At this time, all participants are in a listen-only mode. Later, we will conduct a question-and-answer session, and instructions will follow at that time. If anyone should require assistance during the conference, please press star then 0 on your touch-tone telephone to reach an operator. As a reminder, this conference call is being recorded. I would now like to introduce your hosts for today's conference, Lee Taychuk and Ken Schaefer. If there were black belts in radiology documentation, Lee Taychuk would be the Grand Master. After 20 years of working every day with hospitals around the United States, there are a few documentation quality issues with which Lee is unfamiliar. A former bartender, bond trader, and an unabashed Chicagoland sports enthusiast, she's an ambassador for the importance of documentation quality. Kenneth Schaefer is a 25-year veteran of the medical documentation industry. He's a published author on clinical documentation topics and has been a transcriptionist, quality assurance manager, trainer, business owner, and customer service director. An engaging communicator and a pastor in his church. Ken enjoys spending time with his family, CrossFit, and distance running. Most unusual job ever? Volunteer juggling instructor. Lee and Ken, please go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. What you will know within the hour are the 7 steps necessary for successful speech recognition implementation. We want to point out that this is from a non-technical perspective. We are not IT. We are the operations side. We will show you how to recognize and prevent common pitfalls prior to, during, and after go-live, how to maximize efficiency and productivity in a speech recognition environment, how to ease and eliminate radiologist frustration and dissatisfaction, and this is the only screen that we will read. We promise not to be boring. From the pictures you can see, I am Lee Taychuk. The gentleman on the right is Ken Schaefer, and here we go.
Good morning, all. Thanks for joining. At SpeechTech, we often get questions about what it is exactly that we do because our name is confusing to some people. So right at the outset, we wanted to talk just a little bit about what we do and what we don't do because this is not intended to be a sales presentation. Our goal here is just to share our experience, but it helps to understand the context from which we come. At SpeechTech, we do not sell speech recognition software. We are not a speech recognition vendor. In fact, we don't actually sell software of any kind. We work in the trenches with radiology and other imaging professionals to help them improve the quality of their documentation. We are seriously and passionately committed to having radiology reports that are as accurate as possible. And in that context, we do quality audits and we do provide consulting services, especially around go-lives and upgrades in speech recognition systems. Our goal today, though, is not to sell you anything. We want to provide information that can be used by anyone because before we are vendors in the healthcare space, we are consumers, and the quality of radiology reports is important to us. We are consumers first and vendors second. As we start to think about speech recognition implementations, maybe you're thinking about different software implementations that you've been through, and I divide those broadly into 2 categories. We have what I call the Love Fest and the Fright Fest. A Love Fest generally is about, if you're lucky at your hospital, it's about 1 out of 4 implementations. And we've got just 4 hallmarks of a Love Fest implementation. That's where you've got all the key players involved early. The project comes in not late. It's on time. Your end users are excited about it from the beginning all the way to the end. They understand the value that's been added. And when you're at the end, the project manager or the radiology director gets a raise. If you've been around healthcare for any length of time, you know that if you're lucky, this is 1 implementation in 4. Our goal today is to help you avoid the more common of those implementations. Lee, tell us about that.
So we like to call the bad implementations Fright Fest. And again, for core reasons. First is that stakeholders are the afterthought. And in speech recognition implementations, this is even more important to bring them in early, not as an afterthought, especially if it's a first-time install. We're not talking about tweaking something. We're talking about dramatically altering a core process. Think of it this way. You drive to work the same way every day for 20 years. You know that if you leave the house at 6:45, you have a just over an hour commute, and you'll be sitting at your desk by 8 o'clock a.m. Nope, not today. Today, you pull out of your driveway, you start your commute, only to find that construction on the main road to the hospital has started without warning, without any notice at all, and now you need to take a 25-minute detour. It's going to frustrate you. It's going to cause anxiety. It's going to make you late. And it's probably even going to prompt you to find a job closer to home. With a little advance notice, you could have been prepared. Well, it's the same thing for the radiologist who comes into work one day to find that the transcriptionist that he's worked for or with for 15 years no longer has a job. In fact, in his mind, he'll be doing her job now, and that his routine is drastically different from this point on. We also know that in a Fright Fest environment, that the project will be delivered, but it will not be on time. It will be at some time. End users are frustrated. They're angry. They're not giving you eye contact. They're about to commit mutiny, and usually someone gets fired. Which of these would you prefer to have? We're going to go through some steps now that can alleviate a lot of the problems in the Fright Fest. And planning is probably the most important step. They're all important, but this one really needs the most focus. You need to start with the end in mind. What are the objectives that you want? What are the goals that you have in mind? Are you looking for 100% self-editing? Are you looking to keep some transcriptionists and convert them to editors? Are you looking for a drop-dead go-live date, or are you going to ramp up with the editing, whether it be self-editing or the transcriptionist? You need to assemble a team. You need your IT department buy-in and resources. You need your PACS administrator and whatever team members he or she deems necessary. You need yourself, the radiology director, and you need the chief radiologist. All of those team members are equally important and each have their own role. Again, you need to establish those objectives. What do you want the final outcome to be? And then you schedule the kickoff call, which should be a killer kickoff call. You need a killer kickoff call. On this call, you're going to do several things. You're going to develop a timeline, working backwards again, making sure that you allow for delays. You want to make sure that you pad each and every step of the process. We all know delays happen. People get sick. There are emergencies. There's construction that could put somebody behind. There are all sorts of delays that can happen. If they can happen, they will. And if you allow for them, it's like insurance. You might not need it, but you'll be glad you have it when it happens. You need to schedule weekly status meetings, and do not deviate from this no matter what. If a holiday falls on the day that you've said that the conference calls are, you just need to move it to another day. Don't skip a week. Make them mandatory. People tend to show up for mandatory meetings more often than those that are not mandatory. Make sure that everyone on the team is on that call. You need to have those ones that we mentioned before, but you also need to have your PACS vendor, your RIS, any consultants that you'll be using. Anyone that might be affected in any way, shape, or form should be on this kickoff call because they can tell you what is a realistic timeline. I'm going to use an example here of something that happened in an actual implementation for speech recognition that we were involved with. Everyone from day one was on board. We had our weekly conference calls. The PACS administrators on there. Everything is on track. The person setting up portals. Everything was going exactly as planned, but the risk vendor was not on there. Well, turns out that the risk vendor was an important piece that had been missed on their end, not the facility, but on the risk side. And they no longer had resources available for this project. Unfortunately, it pushed the project out 5 months so that they could get those resources in place and get what they needed. Had they been on those weekly calls, that would have been noticed from day one. You need to have a project manager. It doesn't have to be you. Don't put everything on your plate. The project manager will be there just to make sure that the timeline is being followed, not the details, just the timeline, and that everyone is doing what they say they're going to do when they say they're going to do it. This person should put out the agenda for the weekly calls and follow-up minutes from those calls. Also, keep an executive summary and send that out at least once a week, at very minimum once a month, so that everyone does know what details have been done and what's still standing out there and what could possibly be a delay. And finally, you need to determine who is going to be trained to do what. Most of the speech recognition vendors have great training programs at their corporate training facilities. You don't want to send 10 people. You want to send 2 or 3. But you want those people to be the ones who are going to be in the day-to-day, who are going to do the setup, who are going to be the ones that the radiologists come and say, help, it's broken, please fix me. You need to manage these projects separately, but they are together. As I said, each piece is equally important. You need the interfaces and integration with the PACS, the RIS, the EHR. You need to determine where the reports will be distributed from and where final reports will rest, how addendums will be handled. Every little detail that you can possibly think of needs to be handled at the planning stage. And it needs to be handled in detail from the beginning. Again, we're not IT, we're not talking about the technical end, but they need to be involved. Who is going to set up the portal access and who needs it? Maybe you think it's an admin person. It could be a manager. It could be basically anyone who's going to use it, including radiologists who might be dictating from home. You need to have that person also do the administrative setup, IDs, access, getting into the system, using the system. What levels will they have of security? What do they need to be able to change, or do you absolutely not want them to be able to change? And finally, the radiologist training. How are they going to train the voice for their speech patterns? Usually there's a script that they follow, and it helps set up the system to recognize their voice, their speech patterns, possibly even their accents. They need to be trained on the software proficiency. They need to know how to use this, what buttons to click and when, and they need to know the best practices of both dictation and editing. This is something they've never done before. Often it's something they haven't done before, and they need to be trained.
After the training and as you're moving along in your project, it's hard to overemphasize the importance of testing. Test, test, test. And I say that because a lot of times I'm the guy that gets to go back on site and figure out what's gone wrong either shortly before go live when problems should have been identified much sooner, or in that fright fest just after the go live when new problems are discovered. How can you avoid those problems? By testing. Just a few years back, I was on site at a facility that was upgrading multiple versions and different types of PACS systems. They were changing the dictation client out as they went on to more of a unified system. And what we found is a multi-site facility, and every site required a different install. These PACS systems tend to be, they can be fussy. They can be specific. There can be little undocumented features that need to be identified to make sure that the dictation component works the way that it's supposed to. So the goal is to find those early, and you're going to do that by testing. Consider doing a few dozen live cases, not critical ones, not ER cases, but something that's non-urgent. Run it through the system. Make sure everything goes where it's supposed to go. Try doing an addendum on that case. Do everything within your power to break it. Shoot, maybe offer the radiologist a prize if he can break the system doing some unusual feature. True story, I was in a demo for a speech recognition system about a year, maybe 2 years ago, where in the demo, the radiologist managed to break the system. Bad luck for the speech recognition vendor, but good luck for the radiology department. They'd already identified a feature that they didn't like. And in any large group of radiology physicians, you're going to have, say, 10, 12, 15 people or even larger. You're going to have requests that are specific. So, for example, I've talked to radiologists who have issues using microphones held in their hand because they have tennis elbow, or maybe they have some kind of a running injury that changes the way that the way they sit in their chair. I've actually had both of those requests. So we've looked at alternate routes. How do we get a physician a headset microphone instead of one that's held in his hand? How is it that instead of a microphone advanced in the hand, we can use a foot pedal? Any large group, you're liable to come in to those specific requests. So recommend lots of tests, maybe even take 20, 30, 40, half a day's worth of cases and do dual reads. Have one physician read in the up-and-coming system and have one physician read on the system that's already live. Make sure everything happens the way that it's supposed to. And after you're done testing, we want to train, train, train. You'll hear that as a theme here because it's important and critical to any go live. And what's really important here is that it's not just the radiologists that need to have proficiency in the system. We want to make sure our admin folks, our clerical people have at least some passing or hopefully even better acquaintance with the functions in the speech recognition system you're installing. And why is that? Think about your workflow today. When there's an issue with documentation, who is it that you go to solve that problem? Is it the PACS guy? Is it the front desk person? Every hospital, it's a little bit different. Those people need to have a proficiency in the software that's going to replace your documentation process. It's especially important if you're migrating from a traditional transcription process, because in the past, you fixed most documentation errors simply by dialing an extension, and you don't really know what the transcription department is doing on the back end to create corrections, addendums, to rework problems. It just is a person that's handling that, and that process is going to change. That person may be gone. So make sure that your admin people, your clerical people, your technologists, managers, everybody has as much proficiency with this system as you can give them. Train them on an ongoing basis, but make sure they're trained thoroughly ahead of the go live.
Now, the go live is so important, and it is absolutely my favorite part of the whole process. I love go live week. I love the energy when a plan comes together and everything goes smoothly. Your job at that point should be there to really just to shake hands and kiss babies. You want to have everyone there. You want to have the on-site team, the software company, the consultants, the key inside players. Put up some balloons at the entrance to the radiology department. Put out a table full of cookies and juice. What radiologist doesn't like cookies? Well, maybe some don't. Put out some vegetables too. But make it a celebration. This is something exciting. This is going to really improve everything that they're doing, and it's going to be for the best for everyone. You want the radiologist to be excited about this. They're looking forward to it. But at the same time, they know that those key players are there to support them if they have any last-minute questions or if they get stuck on something that maybe they haven't seen before. The first report should be celebrated. When the first report comes through, everyone should know about it. And look at this. It's great. Everything came together. It really is a celebration. It's all the months of hard work that everyone has put together, and it comes together in such a perfect way that the energy is amazing. So, as you can tell, I love Go Live Week, but only if it goes well.
And I'm the cleanup guy. So after Go Live Week, or even just a little bit before, we want to continue with another one of my favorite words, assess. Assess, assess, assess. Listen, after the balloons deflate, there's still going to be work to do. We all know that a smooth go-live is only step one. And selling, we talk about post-sell, and a post-sell is important. We want to know, is it working? Is it working? Is it working for the physicians? Is the physician getting what he wants? Is the physician getting what he was promised? We want to measure that. We want to remind him. We want to remind him of what the goals were and how those are being achieved. So we suggest actually establishing metrics that highlight the benefit of all the work that you've just done. Track turnaround time. However it is that your facility tracks turnaround time, and there's a limited number of ways, but with speech recognition, it should improve. If you're going from a traditional transcription process to a front-end speech process, clearly it's going to improve. You want to make sure that every day, or maybe not quite every day, but at regular intervals, you're letting physicians know how much more quickly their turnaround time improved. I had exposure to a facility in the area where I live where they had a traditional transcription process for urgent care cases where the report was due within 30 minutes of the film being completed, of the film being taken. What that meant practically for that facility was that the physician had 15 minutes to read the report, and the transcriptionist had 15 minutes to type it. And I don't care your size, I don't care your technology, I don't care your staffing. That is a really, really difficult requirement to nail 100% of the time. The facility was doing a bang-up job, but at the point that they went to a front-end speech recognition, what it did was it helped them beat their own metrics from time the picture was taken to time the report was available. The radiologists now had extra minutes to get it done. It allowed them to be more compliant with their own internal measures. It was good for the radiology group, it was good for the facility, and ultimately it was better for the patients, and that's important because it just so happens that this urgent care center is where I take my family when we need urgent care. So we want to measure data that highlights the benefit. We want to tell that story. You can't tell that story enough. We want to track the amount of time it's taking a physician to dictate per report. And why is this important? This is important because the physician may try to tell you, and he may be right, that he used to be able to dictate a report in 60 seconds or 90 seconds, and now it's taking him 2 minutes. Well, you should know how long it took him on average to dictate the report prior to the conversion, and you should know how long after, so that if there's a legitimate issue, it can be addressed. But if there's not a legitimate issue, if that rumor mill starts turning, you can deflate that and dispel that myth right on the front end. Listen, radiologists love data. They love data. They are among the most data-driven of our medical professionals. And if you don't tell them the data, they're going to ask you. So why not be in front of that curve? Here's another statistic to track. How much money are you saving daily? I mean, in brass tacks, we switch to speech recognition a lot of times because we want to save money. It's not just turnaround time. How much money are you saving daily? That's a really good number to know when your CFO asks you, hey, how did that project go? How much money did we save? What was the ROI really? Why not have that number? It's important. Track documentation quality. And as quality people, that's what we especially love. But are you getting what you need? Anecdotally, and what you know from hard data. Are you having reports turned? Or if you've kept some editors, what are they kicking back? What are they showing you? Have a good system to track that so you know whether to what degree you're improving over time. And lastly, consider getting feedback from outside your department. This is part of the post-sell, and it may be a little bit of a radical idea. You'd have to contextualize this for your facility, but are the referring physicians happy? This is a great way to actually win some points with those folks, because here's what's going to happen. If you ask them, hey, we've switched to a speech recognition system, how are your reports? How's the quality? How's the turnaround time? Assuming the implementation has gone well, they're going to say, hey, this is going awesome. In which case, what they're doing is they're verbalizing their buy-in, and that's always a good thing. If they say, well, actually, our turnaround time has slowed down and the reports are awful, I don't understand what what they mean, I'm getting ready to send my business somewhere else. Well, that isn't what you want to hear, but you'd rather hear it than have them go somewhere else without telling you. So consider polling some of your key referring physicians. Who are your inpatient docs that are giving you all your business? Figure out if they're happy or not, and do a little bit of post-sell. Now, what's interesting about speech recognition, because we live in this space, we think it's tricky. But the truth is, the project management principles we've just suggested here are really fairly routine. There's no project manager in the world that will tell you that early buy-in is not important, that will not highlight emphasize the importance of training or of texting. What we're trying to do here is put them into context. And as we talk about context, what we want to do is just spend a few slides talking about what are some specific mistakes that we can avoid when we're implementing speech recognition. And this is the biggest mistake to avoid. As important as stakeholder buy-in is in any project, and in a speech recognition implementation, it's extremely important. Why is that? Because the chief radiologist is, well, he's always the chief. And we've got a picture of the chief radiologist there. This is a stock photo, but when we found it, we think that guy might actually be the chief radiologist because he looks like a chief radiologist. We think he probably did his residency like at Berkeley. He's that guy, but here's the problem. See how he's smiling? You want the chief radiologist to always be smiling. And the way to have that guy always be smiling is to bring him in early. And we want to make sure they buy in. If you've got rads that have excellent speech recognition success stories from other hospitals, make them tell those stories. They are your cheerleaders. Make those cheerleaders be ambassadors. And here is a project management tool that we like to use that may be a little bit counterintuitive. In any group of 10 radiologists, you're going to have 1 or 2 who are gung-ho. You're going to have 6 or 7 in the middle who actually could go either way in terms of their opinion about what they prefer to do or what they don't. You're going to have 1 or 2 detractors at the bottom. The tendency would be to keep the 1 or 2 on your side to get the 6 or 7 that are in the middle excited about the project. We believe that's a mistake. A better strategy, if you can manage it, is to spend more effort and more time winning over your biggest detractor or your biggest detractors if you have more than one. That is the best way to get the Love Best implementation. If it takes 50% of your resources to make that guy your champion, you win. And on this call, everybody's sitting here thinking about who their biggest detractor is. When I say biggest detractor, you have the name of an MD that you're inserting in that slot. Get that guy on your side, and you're going to win every rad in the group. The same is true not just of radiologists, but anybody else that touches your documentation process, whether that's editors, if you keep them, whether it's technologists, whether it's any office staff. You want to win your detractors early, because if you do that, they will fight the rest of the battles for you. But if that's the biggest mistake to avoid, make sure you have sufficient radiologist buy-in. But some more mistakes to avoid, and we touched on this at the beginning, and we talk about this every time we look at people that are converting, especially from a traditional transcription model, and there's still a lot of hospitals using traditional transcription for radiology. Do not oversimplify the magnitude of the change we are asking the RADs to make. Do not oversimplify that change. The way that they dictate, the way that they document is their core work process. An equivalent, we worked to try to find an equivalent analogy. The best I can come up with is, it's like asking a transcriptionist or a secretary. She comes into work one day, and instead of having a QWERTY keyboard, she has a Dvorak keyboard, or the keys are in some kind of different order with which she's unfamiliar. This happens without her knowledge and without her consent. She's going to be frustrated. When you have a radiologist who's used to having a transcriptionist for 15, 20, 25 years cleaning up the verbal mess that he makes, and you ask him now to be responsible for that with a tool set, he's not on board. Do not oversimplify the ask of what you're presenting to him. And remember, there are more moving parts than you realize in your documentation process, especially on the transcription side. Those folks are running a whole lot of interference behind the scene. Lee and I both spent, Lee and I, we spent a lot of years doing transcription. And what we find is that people that are intimately involved in the documentation process tend to oversimplify what's going to happen when you adjust it. So do not oversimplify either your ask to the radiologist or your process changes or process improvements. And do not have an unrealistic timeline. Always allow for unexpected delays. Listen, if you have sufficient resources, and if you overstaff and you have extra time, that's a win. If you finish early and under budget, that's awesome. Nobody's going to hate you. Finish late and with inadequate support, that's going to be a problem. And this next slide, this is actually my favorite slide in this whole presentation. And if you listen to nothing else, this slide may be worth the entire hour. So, hey, Harry in Houston, I can see you through your monitor. Pay attention. Listen, language is a big deal when you are working with anybody, but especially when you are working with well-educated radiology professionals. Language is a big deal. So when we are working with radiologists, we do not talk about changing systems. We talk about improvement. We do not do change, we do improvement. Everyone is change averse, but everybody wants improvement. Some years back, I was doing a dictation system integration in St. Louis, and I'd been warned that the physicians were change averse, that we were going to run into problems with radiologists who did not want to change the dictation system. And they actually gave me the name of the biggest detractor, the guy who was going to be the biggest problem. I walked into the reading room. He was the first one that I met. And I said, hello, my name is Ken Schaefer, and I am the guy that is here to improve your dictation system. He visibly relaxed and became my fan. Do not do change, do improvement. The language you use is more important than you might imagine. I have a seven-month-old son at home. And when my wife wants me to change his diaper, she doesn't ask me to change his diaper. What she says is, honey, would you like to improve the smell in this room? You can use those tricks of language to make sure that your biggest detractors and all staff stays on your side.
There are other things that you can do to make sure that your implementation is successful. Other than what Ken pointed out, I'm going to say it again and again and again. Win the biggest detractor. Address the fear and the uncertainty early, not just of that negative Nelly, but of everyone involved. We all have the negative Nellies out there, but we have to find out why they're being that way. Is it fear? Is it the uncertainty? Do they think they're being replaced by technology? Do they think that they're going to be required to produce more reports in a shorter period of time, or even worse, take on extra hours or days? Are they going to give up some of their freedom because now they have to do more work? Now they have to do their own work plus that of the transcriptionist. Those are things that you can alleviate right from the beginning and let them know that you're there to support them, that you want to make sure that every step of this is handled properly and that you're going to over-plan, you're going to over-train to make sure that's smooth. Be very transparent. Don't hide that you're going to speech recognition until it's right there in their face. Right from the beginning, have them involved, maybe not in the actual decision, but you can let them think they're part of that decision. And let them know every step of the way if there are delays, if there are things that might be different from the original plan. Be very transparent with them and they'll be on board with you. Most importantly, listen. Hospitals can be a hotbed for rumors. You want to make sure that you've got your ear to the ground there, that you're listening to what's being said and how it's being said. That can make the difference between the good, the bad, and the ugly. There are some things that you can do for your radiologist to ease some of that frustration and dissatisfaction, and you can tell them up front that you're going to do this. They're going to have dictation training, and it's not just a one-time thing. They've spent 25,000 hours or more to become a radiologist. They're professionals. They are very detail-oriented. They want to know that what they're doing right. So let them know up front they're going to have ongoing dictation training, ongoing editing training, and while this might be different than what they're used to, it's better than what they're used to. Make sure the ergonomics are there, that they're using, as Ken said, a headset. If they have tennis elbow, maybe they want a foot pedal. Take care of those things up front. We had a kind of a funny example. We had a radiologist who had been on speech recognition for about 6 months, and he kept telling us, this is slowing me down, this is slowing me down. Very clear speaking, edits very well, couldn't figure it out. Within probably 2 minutes of being in that room, we knew what the problem was. He's left-handed. So every time he needed to push a button on his mic, he would flip it to the other hand and then flip it back to dictate some more. We changed the buttons around for him and made sure that it was ergonomically correct for him, that he wasn't having to flip it to the other side. Another example, and this one was equally funny, is that we had a radiologist whose reports were garbled. And he kept saying, I speak clearly, and he does. We couldn't figure it out. Within 1 second of being in his room, we figured out what the problem was. He dictates with his mic on his lap. And he said he just doesn't feel like holding it in the air the whole time. We gave him a headset, everything's fine. But those are things that you need to think of ahead of time. You don't want to hear about it 3 to 6 months down the line, that the radiologists are unhappy or that they're having to do something that isn't comfortable for them. It might be screen position. Let the screen position be up to them. Don't say this is the standard screen position. They might want it tilted to the left, to the right, hanging from the ceiling. Who knows? Whatever they want and whatever makes them comfortable in terms of screen position, chair position, desk setup, let that happen. They'll have the buy-in that you need. Let your radiologist know that they're going to have assistance with their templates, that if possible, you're going to take the normals that were being used by transcription, perhaps templates that they used at other facilities, and you're going to put them into the new system for them. Let them know that it's really easy to copy some of these templates and make small changes, and that they'll be shown how to do that so they can do it on the fly. We use a rule of thumb with radiologists that we're working with. We tell them that if you dictate the same exact report 2 times, the 3rd time you should be dictating your normal. The 4th time, you should be using that normal. There are different definitions of normals in auto text, and the words are used, they're used the same every time, and you need to let them be on the same vocabulary list that you're using. They can be complete reports, common phrases, or, more importantly, words that the speech recognition engine gets wrong every single time. Let your radiologist know that there's help there for them. They don't have to look like this poor woman who's frustrated beyond belief. Which leads to fine-tuning the system.
Yeah, and as you're wrapping this up, if you think about what your department rhythm looks like 1, 2, maybe 3 months after go live, here's what's happened. You put thousands, tens of thousands for large facilities, maybe hundreds of thousands of reports through that, and it's easy to become complacent. It's easy, with all the moving parts in radiology, it's easy to relegate the documentation process to the back burner. Our encouragement as professionals in this particular niche, this space, would be not to do that. Documentation processes, there's a tremendous amount of benefit to keeping your system for that on your standing department meeting agenda. I mean, I don't know if you have those meetings once a week or once a month or once a quarter, but it makes sense to make an investment in time to see what improvements can be made. In our professional and our personal lives, we always want to ask, what can we do better? And it makes sense to ask that in documentation, because the narrative reports are the end result of all the cumulative effort of work of millions of dollars of equipment and a ton of education, a lot of dedicated people. We want the reports to be right. So what can we do to make the reports better? What can we do to make the documentation process better? Ask different people. It might surprise you where the answer comes from. The front desk person may have an answer or a suggestion on what can be done to make documentation better, because she might be the person that's getting calls from an end client that's frustrated with nonsense language in a radiology report that she receives through the mail. When it comes right down to it, speech recognition systems are they're process systems. And like every process-oriented system, the benefit of a small tweak over time is huge. If you think about the amount of time that it takes to clean up a normal, maybe that's 5 minutes, or maybe it's 5 minutes to set up some kind of voice command, or maybe it's a little bit longer period of time invested in learning to dictate something differently so that the result on average is going to be more accurate. Those few minutes invested cost you in one day, but pay you huge dividends over time. Potentially hundreds of hours, potentially thousands of dollars saved. Think about it. If it takes 5 to 10 minutes to build a proper normal, that may frustrate you when you've got 100 cases pending to be read. But if you use that normal twice a day for a year, that normally potentially saves a dozen hours or so. And that's just for one normal, and not a very well used one at that. Think about the payoff on more commonly used normals, what that payoff is over time. That is a huge payoff. Dozens of hours, hundreds of hours, more cases that can be read, radiologists that can go home early. What we're trying to say here is routine is great when it's the right routine, but routine can be an enemy of excellent. If you have a routine of dictating something to be standardized, take the time to make an improvement. Remember, we don't do changes, we do improvements. Take the time to make that improvement. If you're dictating in a way that every once in a while the speech recognition system chokes on, change what you dictate. Change what you dictate, because if you learn a new habit and new words that the speech recognition system is going to get right 100% of the time, it's less rework that you have to do, less editing you have to look out for, fewer reports you're going to get back, fewer referring physicians that are going to be unhappy. Continue to tweak the system over time. As it gets better and better and better, the results continue to pay. Investment in speech recognition pays into the future. As we're wrapping up here, I just want to emphasize, we know that a lot of this content, or at least some of it, is somewhat standard. I mean, project management is its own discipline, right? You can get a certification in project management. There's people that have been doing project management as an exclusive discipline they're not IT, they're not radiology, they're not imaging professionals, they're people that are skilled in bringing all those folks together and moving a project forward. And these are the folks that live and breathe Microsoft Project and Gantt charts and little arrow diagrams, and we've all seen these and try to get our head. Maybe we have project managers on this call. Hey, we're happy for you. If you're here, we're thrilled to have you. With speech recognition, it's a big deal to get this right, because the stakes are high. The stakes are high in this kind of implementation, because the players, the end user, which is the radiologist, they have a ton of power. These are highly paid, highly skilled, and perhaps most importantly, very vocal professionals. We want to use normal project management techniques, but we want to be aware that this game is played at a different level. And here's why that's potentially even more important. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say, and I'm not trying to throw any of our speech recognition vendors under the bus, that technology has improved tremendously over the last 10 or 20 years, and even over the last 3 to 5, which means if it's improved over the last 3 to 5 years, by definition in the past, it wasn't as good. In fact, the readers of his talk, one of the prominent HIT blogs in our space, a few years back voted speech recognition is the most overhyped technology. Whether that's true or not, or was true or not at the time, I don't know. What I do know is the engines today are phenomenal. The technology is really, really good, but some people have a bad taste in their mouth from previous years, previous decades even, and they are detractors. And even if the technology is awesome, even if it works 100% out of the gate, it still dramatically impacts how a physician, how a radiologist works. And every physician and every radiologist is particular about how he works. And every physician, every radiologist has a tremendous amount of clout. There is no doubt that this technology can deliver, but this implementation, more than most, has the potential to be highly, highly emotional because of the adjustments you're asking people to make. It is a political minefield. Proceed with caution. So when you're rolling out a speech recognition project and you're looking for ways to make it successful, we suggest you overplan, over-execute, and over-deliver. And we're going to take a few minutes just now to answer some questions.
Sorry about that. I am going to interrupt here before we go to the questions and answers. And I added 3 slides on Ken without him knowing. I'm going to do 2 blatant pitches, one for AHRA and one for SpeechCheck, but I will be pretty quick on the SpeechCheck side. The first is that we need your help. AHRA needs your help, and we need your help for some webinar ideas. We have some that we've come up with over time, but we need your feedback. We need to know what you're interested in learning about, what you want to hear, what you want us to research for you because you might not have time to do it yourself. It doesn't even have to be specifically about speech recognition or documentation. We love to give webinars, and we want it to be important to our listeners and viewers, the content that we're covering. We want it to be relevant to what you're doing or what you're facing. It can be anything from leadership to financial to speech recognition. So please, if you have any ideas, something you'd like to see, my email is very simple. It's Lee, L-E-E, at speechcheck.com. I would love to get some ideas, and I promise not to stalk you after you email me. We're just looking for some ideas. And then please remember to support the AHRA, especially the Education Foundation. Without them, companies like SpeechCheck would not be able to hold free webinars for you. We wouldn't be able to have annual meetings. We wouldn't be able to have local meetings. Our sponsors and members and volunteers are all equally important. There are many, many, many opportunities for you to volunteer within AHRA at many different levels with different time and talent commitments. Volunteering is a great way to meet other members and to form great lasting friendships. It doesn't matter if you're new to AHRA or an old hand like some of us, but anything you can do is sincerely appreciated. Your membership is valuable, and you get out of it what you put into it. Support the events, volunteer for committees, network and benchmark. It all works and is, frankly, a lot of fun. I look forward to the events, whether at a local level or a national level. Great people, great ideas, excellent return on your membership investment. Speaking of events, AHRA National Annual Convention is right around the corner in Washington, D.C. Ken is actually speaking on speech recognition implementation, upgrades, and quality at 10 o'clock on Wednesday at the show in room 4. He really is a great in-person presenter. He's interesting, fun, definitely not boring. He is planning an interactive session, and we'll have information we haven't previously covered. We also have our booth there. Ken will be doing short presentations on a variety of subjects every hour on the 15s and 45s, and I'll be at the booth, or probably more realistically walking around talking. But you'll see me there at the show. Our sales team will be on hand to answer questions and can show you actual results from customers. Our lead trainer and coach, Colleen, will be there to answer general questions. And last but not least, we are repeating the kegs of root beer from last year. It was a big hit, and we found another local root beer manufacturer and distributor to supply the kegs. Once the annual show is done, we start planning immediately for the fall AHRA conference, which is going to be held in St. Louis this year. We hope to see you at these events. But first, one short, shameless plug for SpeechCheck before the questions and answers. you'll notice at the annual convention in 2 weeks and at a lot of different marketing materials we have, and then at RSNA in the winter in Chicago, that we have a shark theme. You'll hear the Jaws music in the background, see a huge shark graphic on the big wall, and you'll see us walking around wearing Shark Attack lifeguard shirts. The reason we chose a shark as our mascot was easy. We believe that radiology professionals, you often have sharks circling. Other departments are jealous of your capital budget, point out the shortcomings, real or imagined. There are outpatient imaging centers looking for hospital business, if you're in a hospital, circling, waiting for your referring physicians to make a change. For those of you in an outpatient imaging center, don't be naive. The hospitals are watching you too, waiting for your referring physicians to switch back over or to switch over. You also often feel like you're on an island, separate from other going-ons at your facility. And then there are lawyers, the biggest and meanest sharks of all, circling and waiting for that big lawsuit to happen. So there are sharks all around, and our job at SpeechCheck is to get rid of the sharks, to tame them, so to speak. We do many different services, implementation support. We can standardize your processes, including templates and formatting. We do quality audits and process improvement. We're available to coach your rads on best practices of dictation and editing. And for those of you who already use speech recognition but don't have 100% self-edit, we can help you eliminate all transcription and editing costs. That was my blatant plug, and we're going to go on to questions and answers now.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have a question at this time, please press star, then the number 1 key on your touch-tone telephone. If your question has been answered or you wish to remove yourself from the queue, please press the pound key.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take these, starting with one from Cheryl. I'm only going to say the first name and not the facility or anything, just for privacy reasons. Cheryl says, we have a couple of rads that won't budge. They send everything to editor. Have you experienced this and what to do? Actually, we have experienced this many, many times. And there are a couple of things that you can do. First of all, find out what's keeping them from budging. Is it fear? Do they think their productivity will go down? Do they need additional training or coaching? Are they just not sure of what they're doing? Were they fully trained in the beginning and maybe just because they didn't use it and started sending things to editor, it's just habit? First thing to do is to sit down and say, these are our expectations and this is how we're going to do it. As I said, all of those methods work. We handle this on a regular basis, and I think the best advice I have is just to be strong with them and say, this is what we're going to do and this is how we're going to get there. And my next question then is from, and if I don't answer it completely, please add something on there. I apologize, I'm doing this live and didn't have the questions before. I have a Nancy asking, saying, I missed what you said about self-edits. What is the target at most facilities? That is really a personal preference, but the software is amazing. And once the radiologists get used to self-editing their own work and they know that they're doing a good job and they know that the quality is there, the quality does need to be measured so that they know it's there and that they're comfortable that they're doing the absolute best they can do, the goal should be 100% self-edit. I own a transcription company, and I believe that 100% self-edit is possible, eliminating transcription costs. So the goal should be 100%. We do have some facilities that say 60%, some that say 75%, but the goal really should be 100%. Okay, my next question is from a Jordan, and Jordan asked, did we go over what the target for self-edit reports for most facilities was? We just covered that. And also, how long do typical SR implementations take? That's something that the software company would be much better at answering. It depends on resources, it depends on size, it depends on a whole lot of things. However, rule of thumb is anywhere from, say, 4 to 6 months, especially the larger facilities. It can be even a little bit longer. It really is worked out with the software company, but 4 to 6 months is what we typically see. Next is from Troy. Troy says, McKesson, including PACS, is house-wide in our facility. What is your experience when a site does not go with the VR product that is sold by your PACS vendor? I have a mixed bag of answers on that as well, just because for a long time the PACS vendors weren't selling the speech recognition software. This is fairly new to this process. Again, that's a technical question that you really should talk to the speech recognition vendor, but we have seen it over and over again that they don't necessarily have to be exactly what they're selling. They don't want to lose your business if you're looking at a different product. If they have an exclusive, that's something they need to discuss with you, but that's not something I can answer for them. Another question coming from Deborah. Deborah asks, how do you get rads to self-edit? They say they don't have the time. What we have learned is that if they are properly trained on best practices for both dictation and editing, and that they are aware of a lot of shortcuts they can take, and that they have their templates in place and know how to use them, that it is actually quicker to self-edit than it is to send a transcription, go back into the queue, read what they've written, so they're editing, or let's face it, a lot of times they don't read what's been typed, and then send it back. We can shorten that time to be equal or less than what they're typically used to dictating and signing off on. It really is just getting use of templates and autocorrect and being able to use them and knowing how. Sometimes we've seen some really simple things where a radiologist will say, I have 4,000, and that is not an exaggeration. We had a radiologist say, I have 4,000 templates. I don't even know what to use anymore. They need to be very concise. If they have 4,000, they're not using them. The best thing is to have one for each type of exam and maybe a couple of outliers of different diagnoses or impressions. But getting them to use auto text, autocorrect, and templates is the best way to cut down their time and to make them more efficient, proficient, and productive. We're getting a lot of questions on this. So I'm going to have to ask the moderators to please cut me off when we're out of time. So another question here from Jordan is, when is the best time to involve your PACS and RIS vendors? And the best time is in the planning stages. You need to know what their resources are. You need to know what they can offer and assist with. You need to know if they're going to charge you for implementation or for interfaces. They need to be involved right from the planning before you even pretty much decide on your speech recognition software. You need to have buy-in from both, and you need to know what to expect. You don't want to get into the project, set a timeline, and then have your risk vendor say, we're looking at a year when you're looking at 4 months. To be perfectly on the same page with everyone, it should all happen at the planning stage. It's like most things in life. If you lay the foundation, the end result will be better, and this is absolutely no exception to that. And then his second question on this is, what isn't a benefit to speech recognition? This is where my transcription owner self comes into play. Transcription gave an extra layer of protection. We were the guard dogs for the radiologist. Oftentimes, the transcriptionist would know what the radiologist was going to say before he or she said it. We knew if they constantly mixed up left or right. We knew if they said something very fast. We've already clarified what they're saying, like lungs are clear, coming out as one syllable. Speech recognition is still technology, and it does need a human touch, and that human touch has now become the radiologist. They've lost their layer of security there. They've depended on transcriptionists their entire careers to, frankly, correct what they do wrong. Now they're expected to do it themselves. That is the only thing that is not a benefit, but it can be overcome with the use of templates and with additional coaching and training to make sure quality is where it belongs. And then from Diane, she wrote, do you recommend the use of templates on the first day of a new implementation? Absolutely yes. The radiologists need to be trained prior to going live if possible. What we're doing for a few facilities right now during implementation is making sure that all of the templates are in place for each radiologist, that they're familiar with how to use them and when to use them. Don't forget, a lot of them have been using templates in a different way for years. They'll say, transcriptionists, give this a normal, or Sue, give this a normal. and the transcriptionist would put exactly what they wanted. Now they just have to say something like normal chest, normal two-view chest, normal pediatric chest. Basically, they just have to say whatever their template name is instead of saying give it a normal. And my last question is, if you don't get involved with PACS risk vendors before you purchase speech recognition, how do you know that SR will even integrate? Doesn't this need to happen prior to planning? By planning, I meant pre-purchase. It was the full planning. It needs to be before you purchase your speech recognition software. You need to talk to your RIS. You need to talk to your PACS. You need to talk to administration so they know what the costs are going to be of all of this. Yes, it needs to happen before the project plan, during the project plan, prior to purchase. It is a very big part of this. And I have time for one more. Actually, it's a repeat question, and I'm actually going to say it again. What is the percentage that radiologists should self-edit? I believe it's 100% with everything in me. I've seen it happen. I have seen radiologists go from 0 to 100. They're actually easier than those that go from 60% to 100%. If you had asked me that question, say 4 years ago, I would have said 50-50. But I truly, honestly believe that 100% self-edit should be the goal. It is realistic, and it is possible with proper training and foundation. So if right now they're telling me that we are at the end of the presentation, and I'm going to let our moderator take over from here. I want to thank you all for being here today and for putting out the questions. And if you have anything else and you want to ask me, please, again, my email is lee, L-E-E, @speechcheck.com. I'm happy to answer any questions if I have it. If I don't have it, I'll find it for you. So thanks again, and have a great day.